Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 193. Today we've got a special treat for all of the old school Shop Talk listeners. Mike and I are joined by none other than Asa Christiana. That's right. Former editor of Fine Woodworking, Shop Talk Live, Podfather, whatever you want to call him. He is back. It's been almost 100 episodes, and we're happy to have him back on for this episode. He was in Connecticut, and we reached out, and here he is on Shop Talk Live. And in honor of that, starting this week, we are going to be re-releasing the Start Woodworking series. We're going to publish 3 or 4 episodes every week until the whole series is published, only this time on finewoodworking.com, not on startwoodworking.com. It's a bit old school, but the information is still as relevant as it was before. If you or anyone you know is just getting started, this series is going to take you through buying tools, learning how to use the tools, setting up a shop, and making some simple yet really nice projects. It's a great series. I used it a lot when I first got started. So head on over to finewoodworking.com or shoptalklive.com, and we'll have links to the Start Woodworking series in the show notes. But until then, here is Shop Talk Live 193 with Mike Pekovich and Asa Christiana.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Let's pretend we have a really good rapport and that we know each other. We're old friends.
Well, I was really hoping to meet you before we were on camera.
I booked way too little time here. Sorry.
The whole day I've just been like looking around from my desk being like, I got to run into him at least.
Damn it. I should have come earlier, but I didn't want to be that weird guy who graduated high school a long time ago and he's hanging out. Yeah, and everyone's like, Ace is still in the break room. Right.
As the guy who moved away from his hometown and now moved back,
right.
I totally understand
you
what
do?
you're talking
All right.
about.
So I undercooked it a little.
Yeah. But yes, Asa Christiana is here, and this is legitimately the first time that we've met.
Yes.
And Mike.
Hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
Hey, Asa.
There's that.
Hey, Mike.
What's up, man?
So what have you been you haven't been on for, I've done the math, almost 100 episodes.
Wow. Is that like 4 years? 5 years, maybe?
I haven't done that much math.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, what's the question?
Well, what have you been up to?
So I moved out to Portland, which I announced grandly that I was going to do before I left, and that actually took place. And now it feels like my hometown. It was scary because I left a day job and a steady salary to become a freelancer. I work for Fine Woodworking pretty regularly, Fine Home Building very regularly, and I've written some books while I've been out there, which was always a lifelong dream that I know Mike and I both had to share the parts of woodworking that make us the happiest. Yeah, let's segue back. No, but yeah, so it's been great, and I have steady work, so I can't complain.
Good. Is Portland like Portlandia?
Is it? I'm not going to lie. That show's pretty accurate. It's pretty, I mean, it's a cartoony, exaggerated version, but there's a section of Portland east of the river, basically, that is very much like that show.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you move to Portland because of Portlandia, you're not going to be disappointed.
Right.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, if you watch that show and you're like, yeah, I want to go to Women and Women First, that bookstore where they can't reach the book that you're asking for, then yeah, that would be great for you.
When we started watching that, we had just moved from Nashville, which has its neighborhoods that are very similar.
Oh.
And we were like, hey, I know that guy. This isn't that funny. They're just being those people we know.
Right.
So it's good to hear that it is.
I mean, it's a cliche, of course, and humans are people or whatever, wherever you go, and there's all the different varieties of human being personality.
We got the episode title, Humans Are People.
Humans are
That's
people.
it. Yeah.
Wherever you go.
Yeah.
Wherever you go.
Nice.
You're welcome.
Made that one easy. So you have 2 books with you.
Yes. So one of my longtime dreams really was to do a book on the basics, which I feel like that's kind of my strong suit and what I care most about.
You've always been super passionate about that. with the Start Woodworking. So to me, this was a natural first book for you to do.
Yeah, I've always loved it. Frankly, I don't think I'm as good a furniture maker as Mike is, and probably, and I really, I don't know. This is just the kind of thing I like to do, and I'm really passionate about trying to get new people who are a little intimidated by woodworking over that intimidation and help them figure out what to do first, because it's so overwhelming, I think, at first.
Yeah, right. It's like one answer. Oh, I want to get into woodworking. Okay, joiner, planer, table saw, bandsaw, join a woodworking guild or go to school. But your book is more like buy this book and then you can get all the tools and materials at Home Depot.
Basically.
And as you go.
Yeah.
And as you go and fit them into the back of your crappy whatever car you have because you're young and whatever, and you don't have to have these big giant machines that you can't drag through your life and can't afford.
Right.
So yeah, I started with the way I would tell. I mean, the nice thing about a book is it's like the world according to me.
Yes.
Because, Mike and I have both tap danced for the man for a long time.
Someone's still tap dancing for the man.
And so it's nice to be able to speak just with your own voice about what you would tell somebody to do.
Yeah.
And that's probably, I know for a fact it's different than Mike's guidance slightly, though, whatever about that. But what I told people to do was what I think makes the most sense for me and for people that I would be coaching would be to start with handheld power tools. Mm-hmm. So really start with, like the biggest machine in this book is a chop saw, which is a small tool you can pick up by hand, and then a circ saw, a cordless drill. Like, here's how to be creative with less.
Yeah.
And also, you don't even know if you're going to like this hobby. Yeah. So how do you want to buy $5,000 worth of stuff and then find out that you have to put it all back on, Craigslist?
Yeah.
This is sort of like, you can do amazing things. The book is kind of like, it's a project-based book. Sort of like, you can actually build really worthwhile things with these very basic handheld power tools.
Yeah. I remember when I was first starting, I remember like sitting in my basement, just staring at tools and not doing anything because I didn't have a square that I trusted.
Right.
And it was like, well, I don't have a stare-it. I can't do anything until I have a stare-it. And everything, I am very capable of overcomplicating anything, but it's so easy to like create mountains out of molehills. And that's what's cool about this book, is it really is just like, get a, what are the
Speed square?
Speed square. Thank you. Get a speed square. Use that with your skill saw to start off, to create good straight 90-degree crosscuts. Just cheap, lays it out, get building. The more you build, the more you're going to learn.
It's awesome. You're hitting all my favorite points. Good. Yeah. Like make stuff. Yeah. And also even the title, you can tell kind of my attitude is like not to be, I probably used the word precious 8,000 times when I was on the podcast in the past, but I'm not precious about woodworking. And I just like to get stuff done. I'm a little bit impatient by nature. Mm-hmm. So it's a good book for impatient people.
Yeah.
If that's you, if your hand just popped up, this is probably a great book because you'll get stuff done fast. But it's not those kind of BS projects that people force you to build sometimes when you're starting out. It's like, build this. I don't want to diss any project, but I'm going to step on something. But anyway, build this thing that is kind of dubious whether or not you're ever going to touch this thing again. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that.
It's things that you will use.
Yes. It's all stuff that you could actually use every day in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And you wouldn't be embarrassed by it.
Cool. I brought my book with me.
Yeah, Mike, tell us all about your book.
Actually,
welcome to Shop Talk Live.
I didn't know we were bringing our books.
How to make things with wood.
All right.
/
Mike's book doesn't need any help. It's selling 10 gajillion copies.
Would you stop? Should we answer some questions?
Sure. Yeah, I love questions.
Like. Let's get back into the swing. Get Asa Christiana back into the swing of things, answering questions from listeners.
Did you explain that I'm one of the OGs from the show that
Oh, everybody knows.
They do? All right, cool.
Yeah. Everybody.
I'm still referred to as not Ed.
Yes.
You're the not Ed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every other letter is, I've just finished listening to every single podcast.
And you just feel sorry for people.
That's a tribute.
I listened to every single podcast too before I came here. Yeah. And actually, was it
I'm not saying
All
it's a
right.
bad. I'm just saying everyone knows who Asa is.
Yes.
So yes.
That makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
I'm glad they haven't forgotten about me.
I did this morning go back and watch some of episode number 1.
You did?
Ooh.
Yeah, it was probably rough, right?
It was pretty interesting.
Interesting is a euphemism for very rough.
It was a solid beginning. It was a solid start. Everything
We were
starts
trying to
somewhere.
draw things on the board, weren't we, Mike?
I was the designated drawer. Mike, draw this out.
We thought that we needed. It was so funny. Like
Which is funny because Mike doesn't draw that much.
Ed and I
suck.
think in the beginning, had listened to Adam Carolla's podcast.
Yeah.
And so we thought, that's a really cool format. Could it work? But we were, for woodworking, but we were really nervous about whether such a visual medium would work in a non-visual format.
Yeah.
So we really felt a lot of pressure to make it make sense visually. I like the happy medium we have now where you film it but you don't try to illustrate things necessarily as far as I'm.
It is difficult though to keep it audio centric, and I try and pretend that the camera's not there because I do not want to rely on people seeing things. But hi,
I think we've finally given up on favorite piece of furniture of all time.
oh, that was rough.
Oh, it's this piece by Duncan Gowdy, and he does this cool thing where it's kind of photographic and it's incised, and then he has some is it white paint or black paint? It's awesome though. It's really good. Yeah. That's not good.
So that's it. That's cool. That's good that you're figuring out what works. That's awesome.
My
people-
phone is snoozing something. I don't know what the hell's going
I hear
on.
people all the time in my daily life who are active listeners to the show. So I know you guys are killing it and doing really great, which makes me really happy.
And this is the part where Asa starts making stuff up.
And I do. I'm telling you.
All right, let's answer a question. This first question is from Dan. I recently built a pair of desks featured in issue number 270. I built them mostly the way Michael Robbins did. However, instead of using a domino to construct the top, I used pocket screws. I don't own a domino. I opted for a hollow chisel mortiser, and I thought it would be silly to use a hollow chisel mortiser for the mortises. How do you feel about pocket screws versus slip tenons made with a domino? Both tools make joining pieces of wood much simpler. One uses screws, the other uses wood and glue. One is under $100 and the other is over $1,000. They are both faster and easier than traditional joinery. Am I wrong to think that if I'm not going to use traditional joinery, pocket screws and domino slip tenons are interchangeable? I love my hollow chisel mortiser, and if I'm going to cheat on it, I'll just use screws. So, in one corner,
You're looking at me.
we have Asa Christiana. In the other corner, we have Mike Pekovich.
I'm not in any corner. So, but Asa, you're kind of a fan of the pocket screw or a champion of the pocket screw. Let me say that.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Weren't you responsible? Was that the Mark Edmondson article on pocket screws?
Yeah, I think I might have worked on. Yeah, I think I edited that. Did I shoot that with him? Yes, I shot. It's all a big.
There's a very popular video with you demonstrating pocket screw
that's
joinery.
right. You're right. Yeah, I did edit Mark on that article and shoot the photos.
And he's like a super duper furniture maker, really nice high end stuff. And he was like, pocket screws, they're good for stuff.
I love Mark for that reason. Mark Edmondson, I always loved him as an author because he's democratic, small d, about techniques and tools. It's very close to my own kind of sensibility. And yeah, I think my take on pocket screws, this is a really broad question, but a broad answer is that my take is that pocket screws are a phenomenal invention and they're wonderful where they belong. So like there's places where, for example, the way Mark uses them, Mark Edmondson, is in cabinetry because they're very easy to hide in built-in cabinets. They can go behind, they can go inside where only drawer pockets are, they can go behind face frames. And the truth is, they're a lot stronger than you would intuitively think they are. So that's the upside. The downside is, there's screws that are going in at an angle. So like, for example, in furniture making, he talked about instead of using a domino to construct the top, I use pocket screws. That's a place I probably would not use them because they go in at diagonals, and even if you put them in across a joint from both directions, they're pulling kind of downward on the wood in a way, and I would be afraid they'd open up slight tiny gaps at the top where they'd be really obvious. So I would not use them to join underneath the tabletop, just intuitively. Mike may disagree. But, if it all depends. Like if you're talking about versus a mortise and tenon to hold a table to its legs to rails, pocket screws would probably be fine for a long time, but I still trust a mortise and tenon more to withstand all those kicks and things, a vacuum cleaner and bad moving. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you hit on it. I mean, pocket screws, a big issue is visibility. You don't want to see the face where the screws enter the wood. You can even buy these weird little plugs that are angled supposedly to fill them in. It still doesn't look good.
Unless it's going under a layer of paint.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and in this particular case, you're not seeing anything, and it worked, and that's cool. I think jumping right from a pocket screw to a domino is a bit of a false horse race. There's a couple things in between which are far less expensive than a domino, which might be better suited to this situation. One is just dowels. I mean, dowel joinery is super strong, and if you do it right, super accurate as well.
Yep.
And the other one is the biscuit joiner, which I think is slightly more analogous to the domino. Obviously, you don't have the size, the depth of the tenon, but they can do a really good job of holding stuff together as well.
Yeah, the Rockler makes this little dowel jig that's about $20. You could build, and we did do that in the past in some videos.
Right.
You could build a house full of furniture with that little dowel jig.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3/8-inch Rockler dowel jig, $21.99. That is a steal, and it would be perfect for something like
Biscuits, I actually think, in my experience, that a couple pocket screws is even stronger than a biscuit. They are shockingly strong.
You think really?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because they go deep in a lot of cases. I think they're really, really strong, or at least comparable. Mike's probably right that they're pretty comparable.
I think they're both going to hold things together. I think the advantage of the biscuit slightly, because they're not 100% accurate in terms of alignment, but I do think they're consistent in their misalignment, if that's a thing. Pocket screws, I find the most challenging thing is how are you holding the parts together while you're drilling and while you're screwing them together to keep them from shifting out of alignment.
That's the big challenge with pocket screws, is that they, because they're going in diagonally like a toenail in carpentry, and they're pulling, they'll pull it like a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. They'll pull the piece that they're attaching to over. There's a couple good ways to combat that. One is to clamp really powerfully across the joints.
Yeah.
That works great. Another thing is you can just put a strip of wood down kind of like where it kind of wants to go and restrain it from going in that direction.
So like just clamp a temporary cleat.
Yes.
To keep it from moving down.
Exactly, which can work really well in cabinetry. But the simplest way is just to throw clamps across it. Just be aware it's going to happen. A lot of people aren't aware that it's even going to happen, and it is.
With face frames, I always clamp the entire joint down to the bench as I'm driving it in because it will always move. But that's why that moving is one reason why I think that a biscuit joiner and pocket screws together.
That's crazy.
Crossing the stream.
It's not that crazy, Mike. It's not that crazy.
If you can figure out how to get the room for both, get the screws through where they're not running into the biscuits.
Sure, just stick them in between. Yeah, no, that's because that's what you do in regular plywood construction.
It's true.
You biscuit and then you just screw from the outside where you're not going to see the outside faces of a built-in cabinet. So pocket screw is just sort of a twist on that take. Very good.
Awesome. By the way, Craig has a couple. Sorry, Mike. Craig has a couple.
Is that a Craig T-shirt you've got on there?
No, but they have a $40 pocket screw jig that's really good. They sell that sort of vice grip thing that holds things level. And now I just saw, I haven't tried it, so I don't know, but I think they have this sort of like corner joint clamp that holds everything in place, like actual cabinet parts. A three-way kind of, it'll hold like a T-joint all together in place so nothing shifts while you drive your screws. And thanks, Craig. You can send me a check anytime.
But just final point, big picture. Dan, he saw an article where there's a domino. It's like forget that. I'm using pocket screws, and you did it, and you built it, and that's like, hats off, man.
Yeah.
Just don't let something, like you said, I don't have a Starrett square. How am I going to make this? It's like, I don't have $1,000 domino, and that's what the author used. How could I possibly make this piece of furniture? You can make it however you can figure out how to make it, and it's going to be great. So good job, man.
Amen to that.
Right on. All right. Question number 2 is from Chase.
I don't like Chase, but I will tell you why in just a moment.
Okay.
I'm neutral on Chase.
I'm going to root for him now, just because of that. All right. I'm sorry, normally at this time on a Tuesday, I have to pick my kid up, but not today, and my phone doesn't get that. I'm sorry, everyone.
A lot of phones have a button you can just turn it off.
Apparently, I can't. All right. From Chase, I was trying to edge joint 2 10-foot long boards to make a wide shelf for our closet.
Can we just stop right there? Chase needs a 10-foot long shelf for his closet.
He doesn't live in Connecticut. Leave him alone.
God. I can't fit.
Maybe in Portland they have 10-foot wide closets.
I cannot fit a 10-foot long shelf in my master bedroom. So that's all.
The hatred of Chase arises
That's
from
it.
this single
All
point.
from that. So carry on. Sorry, Chase. I'll get over it.
I was trying to edge joint 2 10-foot long boards to make a wide shelf for our closet using a number 7 hand plane. Typically, I clamp the boards together and plane the common glue edge until I get an even shaving across both. I think that the length of the 2 boards meant that there was some variation that the number 7 didn't get. I can't imagine trying to joint these on a jointer, even if I had one. You have a jointer. Which would you rather have, a 10-foot long closet or a jointer?
I got to go joiner just because I have one. Otherwise, I'm just going to.
I'm caught up on the point that he's hand planing something that's going to be a shelf up in a closet.
I know. I love it.
That's fine. I mean, because I'm the build stuff with wood guy, I wouldn't even join those 2 boards. I'd just nail them both down to the cleats, and just call it good. But anyway, God bless them.
All right. And then he goes on to ask, how would you make this work? So we have 10-foot long boards, which my 8-inch joiner could not joint accurately, probably. I don't have the infeed and outfeed.
Yeah. So I think what he's saying, so you clamp the boards up, like stack them together like a book, clamp the edges, plane them until, like he says, you get a full width shaving from both. That means that angle, even if it's slightly off, it's going to be complementary on each board. They're going to come together nice and flat. The thing on something 10 foot long is it's super difficult, even with the long hand plane, to get that flat all the way along its length. So when you put it together, there's probably some waves where you're going to have some areas where it's coming together super tight and other areas where it's sort of gappy just a little bit. Yeah. So, I mean, okay, let's forget. Okay, first of all, I'm already over the fact you have a 10-foot long closet. And sort of to Ace's point, it's a shelf for a closet. But, God bless him, he's a woodworker. This is what we worry about. So, I think you would do the thing like you did with the hand plane. You'd put them together and just kind of see, where are the high points, maybe work on those high points, maybe get to the point where even if they're not dead tight along the length, but if you can throw a clamp on it to bring it together, that's good.
I have 2 things to say. One is totally agree with Mike that if it's pretty close, clamps will suck it up the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Because there's built-in stresses in boards anyway. People sometimes don't realize that over the life of a board from year to year, they're trying to pull in different directions. So you can do a lot with... Sure. And Mike and I in the past have done some amazing things with clamps and glue together that I can recall. But what I would do, being a little bit more of a power tool guy, is I would throw them on my joiner because it's, even a small joiner has a way longer bed than a hand plane does. And I'd put a work stand up to just kind of give me another hand, so I wasn't wrestling. What you don't want to do is have a small joiner and be pressing down on the front of a board real hard near the cutter head because you have a long lever hanging off the back. But, I'd put a work stand at a couple ends and I would joint them and then I'd clamp them and I'd call it good because it's a closet.
And I'm just saying, if I had a 10-foot long closet, I would probably just have a guy to do my shelves for me.
The other thing is, here's another thing. You could just pick
This is my
boards.
shelf guy.
Just pick boards that are already pretty straight.
Yeah.
So
I think that's good. And even if there's a slight bow, put the concave edges together, get a clamp in the center. It's going to act like a spring joint.
Glue is super strong on an edge joint. Yeah.
would either of you ever think about doing something as crazy as getting a 10-foot long metal stud and using that as a straight edge and using a flush trim bit on a router to edge joint these?
I would not think of something as crazy as that, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't work.
I just think at that point you're feeding into the insanity.
You're not helping the problem. You're encouraging someone who's clearly got issues to go farther off the deep end. It's a good point, Mike.
Well, actually, it's a brilliant tip, Ben.
Yeah.
Well, no, but the question is, and Jeff, you might have more experience with this than any of us. Are those metal studs straight?
I don't know. I've never used them, so I don't.
I've used them in a basement remodel. By the way, they're great for that.
Yeah.
I think they're straight. I think they're straight enough. Plenty straight to create a clamping surface. But just don't overkill it.
Here's what you can do. So get these two boards together. It doesn't matter how good the gap is between these boards. So, get it close, get some like 1x stock, and just screw those perpendicular across the joint, say every 2 or 3 feet. And then go to the table saw and raise the blade just slightly thicker, set it to the gap, and then you just run a kerf there, and then that's going to give you complementary edges, and it's just going to bam.
And my idea was crazy.
Mike, can you draw that on the little whiteboard, please?
That's fairly impressive.
There you go. I didn't make that up.
All right. I think that one's been thoroughly beaten into the ground.
Yeah. Flogged.
All right. It's time to get to our segment, which we've been on a consistent smooth move nonstop. Everybody just screwing up and bragging about it.
Not everybody. Certain people. What do you got? I got a smooth move. Okay.
Well, with the rotating cast, you and I have to come up with more smooth moves than we normally would, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Which, unfortunately, is not that difficult to do.
No. All right, let's enough about smooth moves. We're going to talk about our all-time favorite tools of all time for this week.
Okay. Can someone else go first while I think a little bit?
Yeah, I just got this new Travisher. It's just fantastic. Sorry, Ben, I looked at the notes. Mine is not a Travisher. I don't know if anybody else is a Travisher today. I may have said this one before. If I have, I apologize, but I'm not sorry because it's still cool. X-Acto knife with a brand new X-Acto blade in it. I mean, there's no better feeling than working with it. It's not cutting, and then you get out your little box, you untwist a little knurled little holder guy, put a brand new blade in there, super sharp, and it's just golden.
Well, this is a good sort of like a feeding PR straight back to Fine Woodworking. And if I'm not allowed to say this, you guys can edit this right out. But I've been working on just generally on a tool review of cordless routers. And I'm not going to single out any brands or anything like that because I don't want to give away who won or whatever. But I would just say that one of my favorite new tools is the cordless router. I'm pretty much.
You were just going to comment on the X-Acto.
I know. Like he just
like went right away.
I blew it right. Well, that's because I was doing the classic thing of like, oh, holy crap, I forgot to prepare for this bit. And now I've been thinking furiously about what I could talk about. So I'm sure whatever Mike just said.
He's not entirely certain you said anything at all.
No, it was all white noise. And whatever it was, I'm sure it was witty and pointed and wonderful.
I was hoping you would bring this up because those are pretty cool.
They're really awesome. Yeah. And so what's amazing about a cordless router is you don't realize it, but you spend a lot of time thinking about the cord while you're routing because you're pretty sure that pretty soon it's going to catch on something. It's going to catch on a clamp sticking up. It catches on a corner. It's it's grabbing your your attention, and sometimes you even try to keep routing because you think you're a rock star and try to free the cord while you go one-handed, or you just have to reposition the work, whatever it is. It's amazing to have a router that's completely untethered to route with. And they started, the industry sort of started with trim routers because it's a natural, nimble little tool, and you need less battery power generally. It's a super smart move because all the ways you'd want to use a trim router, like to put roundovers on things and little mortises, it's so sweet to not have the weight of the cord, the tangle of the cord hanging behind you. I'm not going to tell you who won, but I will tell you that these things are really awesome. What I say in the beginning of the article is that going cordless makes any tool a little bit more convenient, but I think going cordless on a router actually improves the quality of your work and the safety of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah. The first time that I heard about a cordless trim router, I thought it was the stupidest idea I'd ever heard of. I was like, why would anyone want a cordless router? And my argument was, you've got a vacuum hose anyways. But a little trim router, you're not using a vacuum hose most of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then also, anytime I see you with yours or Bob Van Dyke use one, it just, especially trim router, hogging away waste between pins on dovetails. It's just like, oh God, I need to get
one. And the battery power is pretty extraordinary. I don't know what that's been in Mike's, but the runtime's pretty crazy. I mean, they just run and run.
It's great. And I'm not going to tell you the brand I have, but it's one that didn't even score very well in the review. And I freaking love it.
Right.
So
what does that tell you?
Screw that.
Yeah, no, they're all great. They're all good. They're all usable. Every single thing I used in the article was all usable. You would be really happy to have that.
Yeah.
Add that to your arsenal of tools.
Yep. And I think it's a good category because a lot of woodworkers I know I am, and the schools I teach at, I end up using trim routers far more than regular routers because a lot of the stuff, like you said, is super small stuff, hinge mortises, routing waste between pins for dovetails, little inlay work and stuff. And I find that the trim router does all that. So then to come out with that category of cordless tool, that's like, oh, thank you very much.
Yeah. They take 1/4-inch shank bits.
Yeah.
So, there's a limitation in how big a molding bit or how deep a mortise you want to do with that smaller shank. But anything you would do with a
1/4-inch
shank bit, these things have more than enough power and runtime.
Anything that you would do with a trim router is not going to come in a 1/2-inch bit.
Yeah.
Yes, right. Some of these are built on the platform of like DeWalt's compact router, which is bigger than a typical trim router. They're not just wimpy little laminate trimmers.
Right. And I keep a chamfer bit in mine. I've been building a lot of packing crates lately. My packing crates are sweet.
I bet they are.
So I keep the chamfer bit, and I knock off all the edges of the little 1x2 edging all over the packing crate. Because
I keep a cordless trim router just for my packing crates.
Yes.
What's the style of your packing crates? Is it a mid-century modern crate?
It's almost a kind of a Toshio Date Japanese toolbox style.
Okay.
Almost.
People have to look up Toshio's name.
It's quarter sawn oak plywood.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. My packing crates are so nice. Number one, my UPS person loves my crates. Every time I go in, she goes, "That's a nice crate." She goes, "What do you do? What's in there? Furniture. Did you make it?" "Yeah. I hope it's as nice as your crate." It's like,
it's even better.
Me too. I hope it is. My crates rock.
I bet they do.
I don't know if we've had you on an episode without you mentioning your packing crates in quite a while. This is the
right?
new
Well,
thing.
he's excited
I've
about
been making
You're
a lot.
trying to
that must mean you're selling a lot of
shed
furniture.
the blue tape thing and turn into the packing crate guy.
I embrace the blue tape identity. It's like playing Chachi on Happy Days or something,
Right.
Just it's either going to haunt you the rest of your life or you just embrace it and just,
Blue tape made you who you are, built the Mike Pekovich franchise.
That's it.
It comes off clean after 7 days. All right, so
Yeah, take us out of here, Ben. What do you got?
my all-time favorite tool of all time for this week is the James Murcell Travisher. He's a Windsor Workshop on Instagram, and I've been making this archtop ukulele and
Baritone ukulele.
And hogging out the back. While I was carving the back, I was just using some gouges and a little heel shave I got from a flea market and scrapers, and it took me, I think, 4 or 5 hours, and it was not a fun 4 or 5 hours. And I get on Instagram and I say, there's got to be a better way of doing this. I'm definitely going to have to buy something soon. And an Instagram friend, I'm not going to out him so that people don't come saying, hey, where do you get Travishers, or can you lend me one? Instagram friend offered to send me one of his Travishers to try out.
Wow.
Because I have never seen a luthier use a Travisher for this purpose.
Huh.
They all use, guitar maker planes and violin maker planes and all sorts of different tools. But I was like, well, Travisher really seems like it would do this job well.
Yeah.
So he sent it to me. I wound up buying it off of him. It's a fantastic tool. I'm not using it again. Travishers I normally use across the grain to hog out, generally for Windsor chairs.
Sure.
I'm using it with the grain on cherry, not on pine, like a Windsor chair would be made out of. Using it with the grain. It is incredible. I was worried about it not being a delicate enough tool. I was worried about it just being, for taking out 1/8 of an inch of stock at a time.
Right.
You're able to, like a old style spoke shave where it's all based off of the tilt of the tool. That's your depth adjustment. This Travisher works the same way. It's affordable. I think you can get them from England shipping for like $150 or something like that. $175 maybe. Just fantastic tool. Works exactly the way you want to. It's not an 18-month wait period like other Travishers, which are wonderful, but
did it show up sharp? Was it sharp when it showed up?
It was sharp, yeah. It was sharp.
Does he give you instructions on sharpening?
There are instructions on his website. I didn't get it from James. I got it from someone who lives down south. And the one that I purchased was obviously used, but it was sharp. He knows what he's doing with some whetstones.
Yeah, because once they have to be really sharp, and once you figure that out, yeah, it's an amazing tool. I did that article on making stools with the German guy. Mike's going to remember his name, and I won't remember his name.
Fisher?
Yeah.
Fabian Fisher. I knew Mike. That's one of Mike's many superpowers.
Which issue?
Oh, you stumped
he comes
him.
up
You
short.
stumped him. But anyway, I shot some photos I'm pretty proud of in that article, and also learned a lot about the Travisher.
Yeah.
And Fabian Fisher used it in multiple ways, not just across the grain, not just with a heavy cut, and all the ways you're using it, he used it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he gave some advice on sharpening it as well. So, that's a really good article for folks to look up. Fisher, I think it's Fischer.
Yeah.
I believe that's the spelling of his last name. And Fabian, his first name.
So,
Yeah.
Ben, can I ask you,
What?
how much is this baritone ukulele costing you so far? You don't have to answer that.
It's not the first one you make. It's the 10th one.
Because the second one's going to be
I am really excited to make a second one so I
Right.
can stop making jigs for
Right.
a while. I'm so far down the jig path, I broke out my old CNC machine. So it's bad.
Wow. Okay.
It's bad when there's sheets of MDF and a CNC. This ukulele probably has not cost me all that much yet because I've been using stock I had lying around. I might have bought a few tools.
Couple tools.
Yeah,
That's
here
okay.
and there.
I think it's kind of a no-brainer that ukulele music would be the new intro, outro music. Are you already using that?
I already redid the intro and outro music. Next host has to do it.
All right. Because it could be really nice. It would make a lovely
I
little...
think I did ukulele on something in a video here. But no. Not yet. Not
Okay.
yet. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a break. Registration is now open for Fine Woodworking Hands-On San Diego, taking place October 4th through 6th, 2019 at Palomar College in San Marcos. Hands-On is all about making and doing with small classes that encourage one-on-one instruction and interaction. Pick one of these great classes. Turn your bandsaw into a box-making wonder with Michael Cullen, developing your designs with Michael Fortune, hand tool essentials with Chris Gochner, the finer points of bowl making with Mike Mahoney, build a mitered box with a Kumiko top with Mike Pekovich, or make a Japanese toolbox with Vic Teslin. It's sure to be a great time. Space is limited. If you're on the West Coast, this is what you've been waiting for. We'll see you there. All right, question number 3 is from Chad. Let's see, do you have any issues with Chad?
Not yet.
Okay. I was just listening to episode number 190, and a listener asked about which tool to buy next. A combo planer jointer? I said that weird. A combo planer jointer or a bandsaw? I've heard similar questions on the show before. I'm curious as to why you never mentioned the idea of investing in a makerspace, shared shop, or tool library. There are a lot of great examples of makerspaces that give access to fully stocked wood and metal shops for a reasonable membership fee, as well as not-for-profit tool libraries that are usually state-funded, just like normal libraries that allow for the borrowing of tools like books. For someone who's just getting started in woodworking, getting access to a full wood shop for a membership fee that wouldn't be enough to buy a single quality power tool might be worth considering. And then he gives some links, and I will post those links on the show notes. Asa, is there anything like that out by you?
There sure is.
In your hippieville out there?
Yeah, in Portlandia. Well, this is a great segue to the second book I wrote while I was in Portland.
Oh man, he's on it.
He's good.
Yeah, which is
Man,
You
is
should. Do you notice how slick he is with
I
it too?
don't think
he
Mike
doesn't
needs-
just shoehorn it in.
Yeah, Mike, I don't just crowbar it into every different conversation. No, the second book I wrote out in Portland is really different from the first. I've gotten inspired by the maker movement, which is sort of people who approach making things by hand in more of a varied way. Like they'll dabble in all sorts of different crafts, and they don't necessarily need to dive deep into any of them. So I wrote this other book called Handmade, Make the Things You Use Every Day. And that, as I made this book, instead of all the projects being by me, it's from makers that I found all across the country. And I met the ones in Portland by going to my local makerspace. And so I spent a fair amount of time there, and I have some, I think, helpful feedback about makerspaces. Makerspaces are, number one, amazing. They're popping up all over the place, or they have popped up all over the place. There's different varieties of them. Some of them are more digitally oriented. The one in Portland is really like everything. For a lot of people who move to a place like Portland, number one, a makerspace becomes like their first social network, because that's how they self-identify, and they might not have a lot of friends in town. It becomes, like a place to have coffee, hang out, have a little potluck events and things like that.
So glad you said luck.
Yeah, and or pot-flavored events. But so there's an upside and a downside to a makerspace. The upside is, like I said, it's social for a lot of us who are holed up in our little workspace and don't get a lot of social interaction. It's great for that. It's great when you're new to town. It's great in a city when you only have a little apartment and you can't make a lot of noise. It's great when you're young and you can't afford a lot of tools. It's great for a lot of reasons. And they also have education at all these places. So it's kind of like they'll start you on your journey, and you can, like ours has, you could do metal jewelry, you can do welding. They have a full woodworking shop. You can rent space there to keep your stuff there. They do it all. There's printmaking, which is super awesome on paper and shirts, and then there's digital tools there as well, like 3D printers and vinyl cutters, etc. The downside of the makerspace is if it's not really near you, and then it's difficult to get to. Like, you have to be realistic with yourself about how often am I really going to go there. And that's complicated by the fact that if you're making furniture and you have a half-made project, it can be really tricky to get that on the bus, back and forth to the makerspace, and you can't really leave your stuff out there. So I think if you managed things right, and maybe you did your assembly back at your apartment, like cut all your parts, get everything ready to go, but do your glue ups in your apartment,
Or even just a rough milling at
Yes.
a space like that, so you don't have to have the big machinery. Maybe you got a workbench set up and some hand tools, and you can just do the rest at your bench.
Yeah. So there's an upside, downside. I always say to people, it's nice to have even if you're in a little apartment, to have a little workspace there that's you can go to in your slippers and jammies and, at night and
Well, the other alternative to spaces like that are woodworking guilds, which are really ramping up. I've been to a number of woodworking guilds in Birmingham and Albany. I was just out in Kansas City for a week. Hi to everybody in Kansas City. And they have like a fully outfitted shop with machines, workbenches, people on staff who are always there all the time to make sure you're doing things right. They have safety programs to go to, programs that get you up and running, because I think not just having access to machinery, but having access to someone who can tell you how to use this stuff and use it not just safely, but in the correct order of operation to end up with flat, square stock. That's a huge thing in and of itself. I'd say if there's any guilds in your area you can try to take advantage of, even if you have to drive a distance, I think that's great. In Oregon, do you guys, there's a guild there. Do they have open shop space?
They totally do. We're super spoiled there. If you're specifically, you're listening to this podcast because you're specifically interested in woodworking. And I think Mike's right. I think a guild is your best first stop versus a makerspace if there's one near you. If there's a guild shop. A lot of guilds are just woodworking clubs that don't have a shop.
Right. But there's guys with shops who are super happy to give you advice.
Totally true. In Oregon, in Portland, we're spoiled. We have a really beautifully outfitted woodworking shop for our guild members. And they not only have regular classes in there for all levels of skill from beginner to end, but also open shop time. And they also have a certification process. You can't just get on a table saw right away. You have got to earn the right to do that by taking some safety and hands-on classes to make sure you're going to be safe on those tools, which, by the way, not only covers their butt, but teaches you how to do woodworking.
Yeah, definitely.
So, when I was in Nashville, there was a space, like a maker space. It seemed like it was geared more towards people trying to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
that's another flavor. That's like I was saying before. They're different flavors.
Yeah, and I've talked to a lot of people when we're out and about, and this place was great. It was expensive though, and I went there to look at it because the only two tools that I was missing was a jointer, and I wanted access to a CNC machine. And they didn't have a CNC, and I would have been paying like $150 a month for access to a joiner. Didn't make sense for me at the time, but I already owned bandsaw, table saw, planer, a lot of hand tools. That didn't make sense to me. If you're just getting started, that would probably be worth it.
Yeah.
I hear about, when we were down at Tampa for hands-on, I was talking to somebody down there. Can't remember his name right now, but they have a makerspace down there. I think the dues were like $50 or $60 a year, and you have to volunteer X number of hours a month. Now, volunteering might be build a crosscut sled for the table saw, like things you want to do anyways. That sounded like the dream right there. And not only did they have a fully outfitted wood shop, they had 3D printers and all that stuff. Really, really, there's a lot of really cool places out there that I hear of. At Fine Woodworking Live, I was talking to somebody in Hawaii that they have fully outfitted shop, and I think it's something like, $200 a year.
Cool.
So look around. I know here, like in Norwalk, the Woodcraft has open shop hours for a really reasonable price. I've seen a couple of different places. So check Woodcrafts, check places.
By the way, that volunteer for swap, your sweat equity for a little bit of time or whatever, something in return. That's catching on all over. That's really big at the guild, the Woodworking Guild, and I think they also do it at the Makerspace in Portland, ADX it's called. But yeah, definitely you have to pay for shop time, but if you're willing to volunteer, you start earning free shop time.
Oh, that's cool.
That thing I think is catching on all over the place. So there's really no excuse. They're making it accessible to more people. If time's the thing you have to give versus money, then that's awesome. That's a great way to get in.
One of the links that Chad sent in was neptl.org, and it is a tool library.
Yeah, what was that? He mentioned the tool library.
It's in Portland, and it's my link isn't clicking.
I was going to leave tool libraries off the table, but that's another option. Yeah.
Well, have you been to one of these places? This place is in like northeast Portland or something. It was a specific neighborhood. You had to live this side of the street or whatever. But their website was incredible. It was like this huge list of tools, and I just clicked on table saw, and they had. Granted, you're not getting an industrial saw stop for the weekend, but they had like a nice job site DeWalt table saw. They had 5 or 6 of them.
So you go
available.
pick up tools, take them, use them, bring them back. Like
Northeast
a library.
Portland tool library. Yeah.
Wow,
It's especially if you're, the make stuff with wood, getting started, don't know if you're, willing to dive as deep down as some crazy people here. This sounds like an ideal setup.
It's a tool library. Yep, those are popping up all over too. That's another variety of it's not a maker space, but it's a sort of a maker resource.
So, I mean, is it just like a storefront?
Remodel your house. I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it is.
I got that at Home Depot. The tool rental counter.
Yeah.
I love that. But you got to go up with a certain swagger, like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Give me that.
And hope someone there can tell you how to turn it on and off and use it.
Yes. And if they said, do you know how to use it? Yeah, I know how to use it. And you just look it up online later.
Right. Good point.
This is awesome because, I mean, I could actually see myself using this. Like, believe it or not, I don't own a jigsaw.
They got a hammer.
Yeah.
But it's like I actually don't have a sliding miter saw. If I'm doing carpentry stuff, I would go take this out for the weekend or something. Go build the chicken coop, bring it back, not have to buy one.
You might also find out that you want to own that tool after you try it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that you don't want to own that tool.
Definitely don't want that.
So definitely check out the tool library thing going on. That's
neat.
Yeah,
a lot of good stuff.
If you have a guild with open shop time, or are part of a makerspace, or know of a place, let us know in the comments below, either on YouTube or on the website, and maybe we could assemble a post with by state or something. Oh man, Betsy's gonna kill me because that sounds like something that she wins about.
You're walking that back already.
Assemble it and maintain it in perpetuity.
Oh, all right. All right. Last question is from David. I am planning to build some outdoor chairs out of mahogany, and I was wondering what finish to apply. I would like something that I don't have to touch up every year, or should I just leave them unfinished? How does mahogany age in the weather? Now, you've been building a lot of outdoor architectural elements,
I've done some for fine home building,
right?
And actually, I have some opinions on this, and there's different answers that are all legitimate. I do have built a fair amount of outdoor stuff for articles and personal use. I'm a no finish person generally. I'm a spend a little bit of extra money to get woods that stand up to the outdoors really well, which are your cedars and ipes. And I just did another article for an unnamed woodworking magazine about using plastic wood and composites to build outdoor furniture. But yeah, I generally stick with cedar for most of what I build. And I avoid the sapwood, the creamy stuff, because that rots.
Are you using like Western red cedar?
Yeah, Western red.
Okay.
Yep. And I don't finish it. What you're going to find with mahogany and cedar and all of these woods is they all end up kind of a silvery gray with time. And you can fight that. For me, I think the only really good way to fight that is to do what boat builders do, which is put like a varnish, a true like spar varnish on there that has UV blockers, and you're actually, to make wood stay looking like wood for many, many years. But then you're into a film finish that requires you to sand it back off, and when it chips and cracks.
If it starts chipping, that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And everything's going to go, you can oil it, but it's not going to really stop it from going gray. So I just buy good wood and let it go gray.
Yeah.
That's my version of it. I don't know if there's any controversy around this topic, but
I mean, the only thing is it's, you want to avoid the direct ground to wood contact, especially if it's a chair leg, which is going to wick up a lot of moisture. I know in the past, we've had people just coat the bottom of the legs or anything in contact with the ground with epoxy just to prevent that wicking up of the moisture through the legs. But other than that, yeah. Just let it go gray.
Let it go gray. It's pretty. It's got wabi-sabi. Looks nice.
I have the owner of my house before me, I would never pay for mahogany for a deck, but I have a mahogany deck, and it really just needs a power washing every year. Or, I should be power washing it every year. I absolutely don't. But yeah, I'm with them. Just let it go.
You want to hear something cool?
Yeah.
The north side of our house, it gets like a little green sometimes. With whatever turns the side of your house green in Connecticut. And it was my job to power wash it, which I have not done in probably 8 years. So Rachel, my wife, said, I'm calling a guy to power wash the side of the house. I said, awesome. He came out, $90. Boom. It looks so good. They even did our little Rubbermaid, plastic trash can little holder thing. Nailed that as well. Did the side of my shop as well.
So by blowing it off for a super long time.
Yeah. I'm entering that phase of my life where I guess I can pay someone to do this instead of do it myself. Because that never would have occurred to me. There you go.
I can't fathom such a thing.
So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I've entered the phase of my life where my parents just bought a power washer, so I get to borrow theirs now.
Ooh, that's a good
See?
phase.
By the way, you can blast the holy hell out of whatever you're blasting. You do have to be careful. You could basically remove all the wood from your side of your house.
I remember being up on a ladder, the extension ladder that tilts up against the house with my power washer. That ladder came away from the side being about a foot because it's like it's like a like a little jetpack, and we're good.
Yeah,
Nice.
practice on the ground first.
I had always, when you mentioned cedar, I didn't think that you've been using Western red cedar, because the red cedar that we used to get in Tennessee was not as good looking as the cedar you're getting for your articles.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any tricks to buying it? You're not just ordering it by the board foot, right?
No, I always go and pick out everything that I use. I never order lots of wood and have them just dropped or
But
whatever.
that's pretty easy to find where you're at, isn't it?
It's true, but I built an entire deck here when I was working here at Fine Woodworking in living here in Connecticut. I built an entire deck out of Western red, and I drove by, and it's still there, doing great. So I think Western red is still a good red cedar is still a good. It's brownish red. I think it's the standard cedar, right? Isn't that what most people use? I guess there's white cedar, right?
Yeah.
Yellow cedar. What do they
Spanish.
use? What did you get out here?
Yeah, it was pretty much the standard brownish red, Western red cedar that I used out here, and it's great. Just like I said, at the home centers and stuff, sometimes they will buy it in big lots, and there'll be a lot of the sapwood, which is a different color, and it doesn't have the antibacterial stuff in it.
Okay.
And that will rot within like 2 years. It's amazing. That part of the board will rot right out, and the rest of it will just
rot on it.
Yeah, and
Okay, that's
the
good
rest
to
of it
know.
will just be sitting there perfect.
Cool.
That's kind of weird.
Huh. Cool. All right. Okay, well, that about does it for this episode. We've been doing a thing where you have random small recommendations. If you have anything, just throw out there for the world. I want to recommend a YouTube channel. It's Arborist Blair Glenn. I'll put a link on the website. 2 N's in Glen. But it's this arborist in, I think, the Seattle, Pacific Northwest area. And he's basically him just going out and looking at trees and telling you what he's going to do and why. And some of it is him actually doing it, chopping things up. But watching this guy analyze a tree is mesmerizing, just hit me. I'm like, oh, okay, well, see, you could tell about 10 years ago they did this here, and then that's why this is doing this and that. It's just, I have no use for it, but I find it mesmerizing.
Huh.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have one?
Yeah, go get Ace's book.
Thanks, man. Which one, Mike, would you tell him to get?
Get the handmade. That one's super cool because it starts to get into different materials other than just wood. And there's some really good how-to, but there's really good profiles on lots of different makers who are doing some really funky, fun stuff. I really like that book.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
You said some kind things to me when it came out, and those really went straight to the heart. So, and my recommendation segues straight out of that. If you are interested in making things and combining other media with wood, like you're not just, you want to throw some metal and concrete and really reach out and do some wild things that are not hard to do, you should check out Instructables.com. Probably everybody knows about Instructables.com, but it's a kind of a crowdsourced website, and it has some experts that work there professionally that put up plans, but a lot of it is also from around the world. And YouTube's full of this stuff, but Instructables is great because there's a gazillion projects there that use all sorts of materials, and it's kind of just a fun place to spend an hour and click around.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have any questions you'd like us to answer on the show, send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening. All right. Well, let's take a break. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Should we just sit
Clear my
around?
throat.
Do you want water or anything?
If it's in here, but if it's...
We can go to the...
No, I'm fine. My whistle's moist.
You've always had
call
a
this-
moist whistle.
That's weird.
Could you call the podcast My Whistle is Moist?
I love that. Ace, you want some water or something?
I
Sure.
know.
Yeah, we don't have any. Sorry.
As I was holding my water.
Yeah. Everyone's like the guy in the desert just pouring it all over his face.